From new wave to metal to pop, music in the 80s touched a lot of genres and a lot of lives, but only one album was ever put on trial for murder. The Beatles don't typically make lists of the most notorious partiers and drug abusers in rock history, but in 1980, Paul McCartney actually got in trouble for marijuana possession in Japan, and it wasn't a tiny amount. He had a cool half-pound of pot on his person when security busted him at Tokyo's Narita airport. He insisted the drugs were for personal use, but skeptical authorities locked him away in the Tokyo Narcotics Detention Center for 9 days nevertheless. He was promptly freed and kicked out of the country, before even going to court. No harm, no foul, just a funny story he gets to tell at parties, but it could have been much worse. The amount of drugs he was caught with actually made a smuggling charge possible, which could have come with a 7-year sentence. The country doesn't mess around when it comes to drug trafficking, but the Japanese wanted to avoid the inevitable fuss that would ensue if they actually locked up a living legend for nearly a decade. Years later, McCartney told the Late Late Show host James Corden about the incident, including the part where he learned he might be facing 7 years hard labor from fellow inmates during his 9-day stint.
That was the sentence for what I'd done. I got out because of my celebrity.
Black Sabbath frontman Ozzy Osbourne is no stranger to outrageous controversy. There's the time he got arrested for urinating near the Alamo in 1982, the time he almost killed a guy by throwing a TV out of a hotel window, and when he recently admitted to the Mirror that he spent much of the pandemic lockdown shooting at birds and cats that wandered onto his property for fun.
You want to try everything.
Other notorious Osbourne legends seem to be more myth than fact, like the infamous ant-snorting story seen in Motley Crue's The Dirt. Osbourne's former guitarist, Jake E. Lee, told Tone Talk that it was mostly made up, for example. Still, this guy has seen and done some absolutely wild stuff. But the Ozziest Ozzy moment of all time has to be the very real time when, while performing live on stage in 1982, he bit the head off a live bat. Thing is, it wasn't on purpose. As he explained to David Letterman years later, he thought the bat was a rubber prop someone in the audience had tossed on stage as a joke.
Somebody threw a bat on stage, and I thought it was one of these toy bats. So I picked it up, bite the thing's head off, and suddenly everybody's freaking out because it's a real bat.
Money goes fast if you're not careful. I heard it through the grapevine singer Marvin Gaye, a Motown icon with years of hits under his belt, found himself living at home in 1983. On top of the mental health, substance abuse, and financial struggles that put him in that position, he and his father, Marvin Gaye, minus the E, didn't get along. According to history, Gaye Sr. was an abusive alcoholic who, rather than being proud of his son's success, may actually have been jealous of it. Earlier reports indicated growing tensions and assaults, but on April 1st, 1984, it got deadly. As the New York Times reported shortly after the incident, police responded to reports of what they called a verbal dispute that led to a physical altercation, where they realized Gaye Sr. had shot his son. According to Frankie Gaye, who wrote about holding his brother as he died that night, and Marvin Gaye, my brother, the singer's final words were, "I got what I wanted. I couldn't do it myself, so I made him do it." Few rockers of the 80s metal scene partied harder than Motley Crue, whose debauched exploits had become the stuff of rock legend.
We f***ed everything up, and we always walked away unscathed.
But on December 8, 1984, tragedy struck. The Crue had taken Finnish glam rockers Hanoi Rocks under their wing during their first United States tour. Crue lead singer Vince Neil and Hanoi Rocks drummer Nicholas Dingley, aka Razzle, both already drunk, hopped into Neil's car to run to the liquor store. While speeding around Beverly Hills, Neil crashed his vehicle into another car. Neil survived, but Razzle, just 24 years old, died on the scene.
Razzle, my buddy from Hanoi Rocks, he died in my arms that night.
Hanoi Rocks guitarist Andy McCoy told Metal Express, "Razzle disappeared, so did Vince. We went looking for them. We drove past this accident and I was like, what color was the car they were driving? Because we just passed a f***ing scene of an accident with a bright red sports car. Then I saw Razzle's hat on the street." In a 2005 interview with Blender magazine, Neil said, "I wrote a $2.5 million check for vehicular manslaughter when Razzle died. I should have gone to prison. I definitely deserved to go to prison. But I did 30 days in jail and got laid and drank beer, because that's the power of cash. That's f***ed up." When former Second Lady Tipper Gore bought her 11-year-old daughter Prince's Purple Rain album, she was shocked at its explicit lyrics. Subsequently, Gore helped to form the Parents Music Resource Center, which put forth an effort to put content warnings on music deemed inappropriate for kids.
They don't understand perhaps the difference in what a slasher group might produce versus a more mainstream group.
Many musicians cried foul. In the widely watched 1985 Tipper Gore-Frank Zappa Senate hearing, also known as the Rock Porn hearing, Gore and the PMRC were opposed by the likes of Frank Zappa, John Denver, and Twisted Sister's Dee Snider, all of whom claimed to be championing artistic freedom.
The beauty of literature, poetry, and music is that they leave room for the audience to put its own imagination, experiences, and dreams into the words.
But Gore's organization was eventually successful, and parental advisory stickers were slapped onto albums with mature content. Gore stuck to her guns in the decades since. She said to Rolling Stone back in 2015, "All of the artists and record companies who still use the advisory label should be applauded for helping parents and kids have these conversations about lyrics around their own values." Interestingly, not everyone thought the stickers were really all that bad for the artists. Music wasn't taken off the shelves, and as MTV explains, the stickers made artists look cool and dangerous, and actually incentivized kids to buy the records. Madonna has never shied away from controversy, but she really pushed the envelope in 1989 when she released a music video for Like a Prayer. Making its debut on Entertainment Tonight, it was immediately clear the video was going to cause problems. It pulls no punches, both in its depiction of murder and racism and its religiously provocative imagery. The video was so late arriving to the ET set that there wasn't enough time to do proper damage control before it hit the air. Instead, producers could only edit out the most shocking parts and air what was left in the closing credits of the episode. But when the whole thing finally made it to MTV uncensored, the outrage was real. Predictably, religious organizations were among the loudest detractors of the video, Madonna, and any company associated with showing or distributing it. Italian Roman Catholic historian Roberto De Mattei said at the time, "The video is a blasphemy and insult because it shows immorals inside a church."
They are trying to keep people from seeing it. Basta per favore!
Not even Pepsi, whose commercials often featured Madonna, got off the hook. They were forced to end their relationship with her due to the backlash, but the boycotts fell short of sinking Madonna's career. Like a Prayer was even nominated for MTV Video of the Year. In 1989, Rob Pilatus and Fabrice Fab Morvan, better known as R&B duo Milli Vanilli, were performing Girl You Know It's True when the track malfunctioned, repeating the same line over and over. They were clearly lip-syncing, but the incident proved to be the tip of a scandalous iceberg that unraveled their career and ousted the entire act as frauds. Many artists have been caught lip-syncing, but it's a rare day when you find out that they never sang a single word on the albums either. AP says that the team behind the duo had gone to great lengths to hide the scam. At one point, they even hired dialect coaches to help Pilatus and Morvan, who had thick German and French accents respectively, sound more like the voices on the track, so nobody would get suspicious during interviews. But it was too little too late. Disgraced and humiliated after the National Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences stripped them of their Grammy, Pilatus and Morvan told the Los Angeles Times that they were actually victims, and had only agreed to participate in the fraud because they were so poor when the offer came in that they'd literally been stealing food just to stay alive. According to Morvan, "Our producer tricked us. We signed contracts as singers, but were never allowed to contribute. It was a nightmare. We were living a lie."
At that moment in our lives, we couldn't think better or wiser. We were 22, 23, very naive.
A satanic panic gripped 1980s America, with millions convinced that crimes and child abuse were perpetrated by devil worshippers and cults.
New and intense scrutiny on the activities of satanic cults.
Stories of devil worship and satanic cults corrupting young minds.
Simultaneously, metal bands were incorporating evil imagery, from the pentagram on Motley Crue's Shout at the Devil to Iron Maiden's 1982 record Number of the Beast. Unsurprisingly, suburban conservatives and headbangers didn't exactly get along. Occasionally, the courts got involved. On December 23, 1985, Raymond Belknap and James Vance were moved to take their own lives. Belknap died, but Vance lived for a few more years, although he was disfigured in his attempt. The grieving families ultimately pinned the blame on British metalheads Judas Priest, saying they hid subliminal messages in their lyrics that brainwashed the young men into taking their lives. Vance himself even claimed, "I believe that alcohol and heavy metal music such as Judas Priest led us to be mesmerized." But there was no hard proof that the band, who denied all responsibility, had secretly infused their music with evil messages. The case was tossed. Years later, Priest frontman Rob Halford told Metro UK, "People backed by people who were against heavy metal music said we were writing songs that if listened to in a certain way made you kill yourself. It was insane." Ozzy Osbourne went through it with his song Suicide Solution, and then it was our turn.
People just don't appreciate that, we're humans with feelings like everybody else, and we don't all sing about love.
If you or anyone you know is having suicidal thoughts, please call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK 8255.